Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Rumbert, Managing Partner of MetricNet, and I will be your host for today's webcast on hacking problem management. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for participating in our webcast today. And I want to thank BrightTalk for inviting MetricNet to speak on this topic. Before we get started, I have just a few administrative announcements to make. During today's webcast, all of you will be in listen-only mode. But if you have any questions during the webcast, you will notice a questions button just below the image of my slides. And during the webcast, you can click that button and type in your questions as the webcast progresses. I plan to wrap up my presentation a few minutes early to answer any questions that you've typed in during the webcast. Now, just by way of quick introduction, MetricNet's core business is metrics, benchmarking, sourcing initiatives, think outsourcing, and AI transformations. We conduct service desk and desktop support benchmarks and outsourcing initiatives in virtually every vertical market, and we now have the largest database of service desk and desktop support benchmarking data in the industry. Additionally, we've negotiated some of the largest ITSM outsourcing deals in the industry and continue to work with both managed service providers and their clients to develop contracts that are mutually beneficial to both parties. If you're interested, you can download today's presentation. It's in PDF format. There are also a number of associated attachments that you will find there. Just click the attachments button. We have 3 polls in our webcast today. So we'll ask you to vote on those polls when they come up. And of course, we're always interested in your feedback and would ask you to rate our webcast as you depart the webcast. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. First point I'd like to make is that everything you see and hear today is empirical in nature. And what that means is that everything is observation-based. It's not hypothetical, it's not theoretical, it's not some academic framework. We've been at this for more than 3 decades now. We've completed more than 4,000 IT service and support benchmarks. We have a global database that covers more than 40 countries. We track on an ongoing basis more than 70 metrics related to IT service and support. And we've created a taxonomy of nearly 120 industry best practices in the areas of human resource management, strategy, ticket handling processes, technology, performance measurement and management, and internal stakeholder communication that are associated with the best performing support organizations in the world. We use this framework to evaluate various methodologies and approaches that you find in the industry, including ITIL, which now has 34 practices. And specifically, we'll be drilling down on ITIL problem management. And just to close the loop on this particular slide, everything I communicate to you is not opinion, it's fact-based. It's based on our observation of what works and what doesn't work when it comes to ITIL problem management. Now, ITIL 4, which came out, more than 4 years ago, ITIL 4 came out in 2019, consisted of 34 practices. ITIL 3 was 26 processes. They changed the vernacular. It is now 34 practices. And you can see them listed here or shown here on page 6. So we have 2 broad categories on the left-hand side: general management policies like architecture management, continual improvement. On the right-hand side, you've got service management practices, including problem management, which we've put a red box around because that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So ITIL is a significant entity. It was invented in 1985. It was a government initiative in the United Kingdom. It was driven by the government in an attempt to try and understand why they were spending so much money on information technology and whether or not they were getting value out of that investment. So those were the humble origins of ITIL. It's now, let's see, from 1985, it's almost a 40-year-old discipline, and we're on version 4. So again, we're going to be drilling down on problem management and talking about how you can get to a result, a favorable result in problem management with the least amount of time and effort. That's what an ITIL hack is. So let's talk about maturing key ITIL practices. The big three when it comes to technical service and support are problem management, knowledge management, and incident management. These are ITIL diagrams that are commonly published. On problem management, you need to detect a problem. You need to characterize and categorize it. What type of problem is it? Hardware versus software, password reset versus VPN token lock. How do we prioritize it? Is it high or low priority? How do we do the analysis so that we can resolve it from a root cause perspective? That's what problem management does, is it eliminates a problem from a root cause perspective so that it no longer generates incidents. So we have resolution and then ultimately closure. And there's a similar cycle, if you will, for knowledge management and incident management. But once again, today we're focused on problem management. We want to talk about how we get a result in problem management without the traditional level of time and effort and certification and maturation and all the things that historically have gone into an ITIL practice or an ITIL process. So let's define problem management formally. It's a root cause of one or more incidents. So you might have as many as 10,000 incidents attached to a problem, meaning that the problem, underlying issue, has driven 10,000 incidents. Or you might have one incident attached to a problem, so we can say that that problem drove a particular incident. Generally, you have more than one incident attached to a problem. And if you're good about tracking this at the ITSM level, generally what you want to be doing is attaching tickets to known problems. And if there is no known problem for a given incident, you create a problem to attach to that incident. So the problem management database grows over time, and each problem in that problem management database will have one or more incidents attached to it. Problem management, by contrast, is the process of managing the life cycle of all of the problems that are in that problem management database that do happen or could happen in an IT service. So that's kind of the high level 30,000 foot view. What is problem management? Problem is an underlying cause. We can eliminate that underlying cause. It used to be called root cause analysis, but ITIL wanted a fancy name for it, so they called it problem management. We can eliminate these root causes. We can eliminate the incidents associated with them. That's a good thing. I heard an expression long time ago in my career, which is that the best ticket is the ticket that never happens because it's been prevented. Think about that. If you can prevent incidents from happening in the first place through problem management or other means, if you can prevent an incident in the first place, you prevent the ticket associated with that incident. Could be multiple tickets associated with that incident. But that's a good thing because then the user is not inconvenienced by that particular incident. This brings us to our first polling question of the day. And we're interested in knowing what level of effort your organization puts into problem management. And we've given you three choices. So and it's subjective, of course, but none at all. That's not so subjective. You know if you're spending no time at all on problem management. You also know if you're spending some time on problem management. Lots of effort, that's where it becomes subjective. By lots of effort, what it means is that it's a significant strategic focus for the organization, and you are devoting probably hundreds, if not thousands of hours a year to the discipline of problem management. So we're interested in understanding what level of effort you put into problem management. So go ahead and answer that question if you would. Give us a feel for to what extent you're pursuing problem management. There's an associated polling question, the second one in our presentation today, which asks a different question, which is, what benefits are you getting out of it? Are you getting no benefit? Are you getting some benefit? Again, this is subjective, but you have probably a pretty good feel for whether you're getting no benefit, some benefit, a significant benefit, or best of all, a significant benefit that is quantified. How would you quantify problem management? Well, there's a variety of metrics you can look at. You can look at number of problems resolved per month. You can look at the reduction in the number of tickets per user per month. That's probably the best metric, because if your problem management is successful over time, you should see the number of tickets on a per capita basis, that is number of tickets divided by number of users, you should see that number decreasing over time. And that's what you want to see. So please weigh in on this. Let us know if you're seeing no benefit, some benefit, a significant benefit, and best of all, a significant benefit that you are quantifying. And you can say, because of our problem management process, we are seeing a reduction in the number of tickets per user per month, or we were seeing a reduction in the number of known problems in the problem management database. And just as an aside, in case you don't know this already, most organizations that engage in problem management have thousands of known problems. That's right, thousands of known problems. And I'm not aware of any organization that has ever eliminated all of their problems. It's just not possible. The best thing you can do is identify the problems that have the biggest impact on the organization and work on those. And if you happen to eliminate, say, the top 10% of all problems that are generating 90% of your incidents, that's a good investment of your time. So you want to be focusing on the problems that have the biggest impact to the organization. And I'll give you a metric for figuring out what those incidents might, or what those problems might be. So let's move on. The traditional approach to maturing ITIL practices, or in ITIL 3 processes, is you do some training, you get some certifications, you assign individuals responsibility over incident problem knowledge management, you mature the practices, you do periodic assessments to see whether or not you are maturing. And the idea is that there's, at the other end of this chart, this process, you get some return on investment. And where would that ROI come from? Well, if you really reduce the number of tickets on a per capita basis, you're reducing the total cost of ownership for service and support, but you're also giving back productive time to your end users. So there's kind of two cost savings that would go into the ROI calculation. One cost savings is how much have you reduced your total cost of ownership in service and support? The other cost savings is if you're returning 5, 10, 15 productive hours to every user annually, think about that. If you have 10,000 individuals in your organization, 10,000 employees, and you're saving them each 10 hours a year by reducing the number of tickets they have, that's a savings of 100,000 person hours per year. Typical person works around 2,000 hours per year. So that's the equivalent of 50 FTEs that you're saving in productivity. And we can monetize that number. In North America, for example, the average FTE costs about $120,000 a year when you add up their salary, their benefits, and all the overhead associated with them. So if we multiply that 120,000 by the 50 FTEs, we get a productivity savings. It's an estimate, but it's directionally accurate. We get a productivity savings in the range of $5 to $6 million per year. So we're after two savings. One is, how do we reduce the total cost of ownership in service and support? And how do we make our users, our customers, as productive as they can possibly be? Now, this is a long, convoluted process. For those of you who've been involved in ITIL, you know that going through the training, the certifications, and the maturation is a time-consuming process. And we recognized this a number of years ago. We had clients that were spending a lot of time and money on ITIL, but we weren't seeing any benefit from it. We weren't seeing a reduction in total cost of ownership. We weren't seeing an improvement in customer satisfaction or any other customer quality index. We weren't seeing improvements in service levels. And we're in a good position to say that by and large, what we were seeing were not good outcomes. We have benchmarking data from several thousand service desk and desktop support benchmarks, and we could regress things like CSAT, Net Promoter Score, Customer Effort Score, First Contact Resolution Rate, Cost per Ticket, Job Satisfaction, Agent Job Satisfaction, and a host of other metrics. We could regress these against an organization's ITIL maturity. And here's what we found: nothing, meaning that when we looked at ITIL maturity and compared that to outcomes vis-a-vis the metrics I just mentioned, we weren't seeing an effect. We weren't seeing a correlation, let alone a causation. And our thought has always been, if you're going to invest in maturing a process, or in this case, a practice, problem management, you should see some measurable benefit as measured by total cost of ownership, as measured by return productivity to users, as measured by FCR, as measured by cost per ticket, as measured by your service levels, and a host of other metrics. And we just weren't seeing it. And we came to the conclusion that there's a couple of factors going on. One is that when an individual is put in charge of an ITIL practice, like problem management, it's usually part of their existing responsibilities. Very rarely do you have somebody working full-time on problem management or incident management or knowledge management. Generally, you have individuals working in a service desk or desktop support, and part of their responsibility is to mature problem, incident, and knowledge management. Well, we know from experience that urgency always takes priority over necessity. So if we consider problem management a necessity, strategically important, but there are urgent things, particularly if your service desk might be understaffed, for example, the urgent things get taken care of. That is, you manage the ticket queue. You try and resolve tickets within the service levels that you've established for your service desk. And what goes by the wayside are these initiatives around problem, incident, and knowledge management. So that's one challenge that we find, is that the individuals put in charge of these functions are well-meaning, but they simply don't have the bandwidth to really attack these ITIL practices and mature them over time. Second reason is that there's high turnover in this industry. So if you put somebody in charge of, say, problem management, there's a pretty good chance that they're not even going to be in that position a year later. They might have moved into a supervisory position. They might have moved into, say, a DBA, a database administrator position. They may have moved into some other role within the organization, or they may have left your organization altogether. So we find that the lack of resource commitment and the lack of continuity of that resource commitment is one of the things that makes it very difficult to mature any ITIL practice. And so we started thinking, well, the end result of ITIL should be good. We should see better, faster, cheaper, higher quality, lower cost, quicker resolution times, but we're not seeing that. We have the empirical data to prove that. But we do like the idea of problem management if we can reduce ticket volume through root cause analysis and reduce the inconvenience of those tickets to the end users and reduce the TCO of the support function over time. We like that outcome, but the process of getting there doesn't work. Simple as that. So an ITIL hack bypasses this traditional approach to ITIL, the one I showed you, the maze on the prior page, which is long and convoluted and doesn't produce results. An ITIL hack is results-oriented. Design thinking means we think about the end result and we design a way to get to that end result that kind of blows up existing paradigms and says, forget about the traditional approach. How do we get to a reduction in TCO, a reduction in ticket volume, and a reduction in the productive hours that tickets cost your end users? How do we get there as quick as possible without doing all this certification, training, maturation? Is there a way to do it? And the answer is yes, there is. So design thinking starts with the desired goal. Our desired goal is to reduce the number of tickets on a per capita basis. That in turn reduces your total cost of ownership, and it reduces the productivity hours that you rob, or I should say that tickets rob from the end users. So we want to get to that goal. And typically the methodology is going to be approached to your unique organization. So for example, you may have good records in your ITSM system, records meaning tickets that have been categorized effectively. Effective ticket categorization is enormously helpful, as you know, in both knowledge management and problem management. And if you have good categorization, a good taxonomy for categorizing your tickets, it makes both problem and knowledge management much easier. If you don't have that, then there's a different approach typically that's going to be taken, whereby you're probably going to recategorize some of your tickets so that you understand, that a ticket in the so-called other category, which is usually the number 1 or number 2 category of tickets, that gets reassigned to something else. It gets reassigned to Outlook, or it gets reassigned to, VPN token lock. It gets reassigned to Microsoft Windows, or whatever it might be. But having the proper categorization of tickets is very helpful when you're doing both problem and knowledge management, and incident management for that matter. Now, don't let that stop you if you don't have good categorization of your tickets. That, after all, is what an ITIL hack is all about, is bypassing whatever may be in the way of getting you to a result in ITIL. But my point is that the specific approach you take in your organization might look different from that of every other organization that's involved in this ITIL hack. One of the reasons being what I just mentioned, is that you may or may not have good ticket categorization. You may or may not have other tools besides your ITSM tool, whether that's ServiceNow, Cherwell, Remedy, BMC, or there's a host of tools out there, hundreds of them, as you know. Doesn't matter what your tool is, but the tool and the maturity of your tool and the quality of your tickets, that actually is a metric, is ticket quality. The quality of your tickets is all going to influence this design thinking approach to reducing the number of tickets on a per capita basis, the so-called ITIL hack. Here's the key thing, though, is that you get results from an ITIL hack in days or weeks, not months, years, or never. The vast majority never get any results from their ITIL practices, not just in problem management, but in all of the other areas as well, for the reason I mentioned: lack of resources being applied to ITIL and the turnover that you see in most IT support organizations. So what if we can get to an end result on problem management without all the blood, sweat, and tears associated with that convoluted diagram on the prior page? It turns out there is a way to do it. So think about it this way. The traditional approach is a huge amount of effort and produces very little results. An ITIL hack produces measurable results, significant results, and quantifiable results, and it does so with far less effort. The choice is obvious here. The traditional approach doesn't work. We can prove that with, and by the way, I'm not anti-ITIL at all. ITIL's done a lot of good things. We understand now what a change management database is. We understand the difference between an incident and a service request. There's a lot of good things that have come out of ITIL, but the approach to maturing ITIL is broken, or maybe more accurately, it never worked. And so what we want to do is get you into this upper right-hand quadrant here, where the level of effort is on the low side, but the results are on the high side. Moreover, we're not showing the time dimension here. We want to get there quickly. We don't want to spend years doing this. Okay, so the choice is obvious. If you can hack ITIL and achieve a result in a relatively short period of time that's measurable and makes an impact on the quality of service, on the disruption to your customers, that is, returns productivity to your customers, and reduces your total cost of ownership, that's a good thing. So the idea here is less effort, greater results. Now, what's central to our discussion here is understanding what shift left is all about. And from 2022, this is what the shift left diagram looks like. So if we start on the far right-hand side, the average cost fully loaded, meaning all personnel plus all of the indirect costs, fully loaded cost of a vendor ticket was about $600. Now, these numbers are averages. The variance around these means, the variance around the average is huge. It's, I've seen vendor tickets resolve for $25,000, and I've seen them resolve for $50. Same thing on field services. The average fully loaded cost of a field support ticket is about $221 last year, but the variance is huge. I've seen them as low as $25. I've seen them as high as $2,000 or $3,000. And the same is true of every one of these numbers you see here. These are averages, and the variance around the average is quite large. So level 3 IT support, $100 a ticket on average. Desktop support, $70 on average. Level 1 service desk, $22. Self-help, self-service on average, $2 per resolution. Problem management, which is level -1, root cause analysis. I put 0 there, but the reality is it's not a cost, it's a benefit. So the cost is whatever cost you spend on problem management, it's mostly labor. The benefit is how many tickets did you eliminate? So let's say you eliminate 1,000 tickets and your average cost per ticket is $22. That's 1,000 tickets a month, that is. So 1,000 tickets a month times $22 a ticket is a reduction in cost, TCO of $22,000 per month. Now, if you're spending $5,000 a month on problem management, but you're eliminating 1,000 tickets at $22,000 a ticket, your benefit is $22,000. So we didn't put a number there. We know it's probably negative, meaning that the cost is a negative cost. You do have a cost associated with problem management, but the benefit should outweigh the cost, meaning that the prevented cost of the incidents that you eliminate through problem management should be greater, in fact, far greater than what you spend on the problem management process itself. And then finally, on the far left-hand side, we have seek and destroy, which is really your machine learning AI. And you could also include in there your voice and chat bots. Voice and chat bots are typically not improving through machine learning. They are rules-based tools, so they're not true machine learning AI, but nevertheless, they tend to fall into the category of AI, even though technically they're not. But there are other tools out there, you've heard of them, I'm sure, that do engage in machine learning AI that will detect problems before they start to generate tickets. And as I mentioned very early on in this presentation, the best ticket is a ticket that never happens because you've eliminated it from a root cause perspective, or you've preemptively eliminated it through AI and machine learning. You've identified an anomaly. You either auto-correct that anomaly, or you send an alert to IT, and IT corrects that problem. So we're only now starting to see credible demonstrations of that technology at level -2, but eventually everything that you see on this chart will shift left. And I've made a bold prediction, which I don't think is actually that bold. But if you were on my AI presentation earlier this year, you know that I'm projecting within the next 10 years that 80% of all IT support jobs are going to go away, largely as a result of AI and machine learning, as well as the voice and chat bots. That's actually not a bad thing, because what's left over are the really complex problems that AI isn't even smart enough to resolve, and chat and voice bots can't resolve, but your most effective technicians, who will have the title of support engineer, will have the capability to resolve. So yeah, there will be massive headcount reductions in IT service and support as the result of AI and machine learning. But overall, it's a good thing. And by the way, we've been through this 100 times before in the history of humanity. We evolved from hunter-gatherers to farmers, and farmers to industrialists, and industrialists to information processors, and information processors to Web3 technicians, and eventually in service and support, those that are currently technicians or agents or analysts will become tech support engineers, and those tech support engineers will be telling the bots what to do, and the bots will be telling you what to tell the bots to do. In other words, you're not going to open up a manual and learn how to use AI and machine learning. You're going to turn on your computer, and the AI machine learning will be right there with you as a co-pilot, so to speak, and they'll be telling you how to use it. So I don't see a steep learning curve for technicians or agents that are using the AI and machine learning bots. They will teach you how to use them, and they will tell you how to use them. They will get smarter as you get smarter. So it's a co-pilot situation where both the bot gets smarter and the engineer gets smarter over time. But this is central to understanding why problem management is so important, is because it is embedded in this concept of shift left. And if you shift left far enough, eventually everything falls off the far left side of this chart. It's either eliminated preemptively through AI and machine learning, or it's eliminated preemptively through problem management. And because citizen support is such a labor-intensive function, 2/3 of your cost is tied up in the personnel that provide the support, and then the other 1/3 is your overhead, meaning your SaaS subscriptions, your telecommunications, your training, your travel, your HDI conferences, and all that kind of stuff. So 2/3 personnel cost, 1/3 indirect cost. What problem management does is, from a preemptive perspective, it takes known problems and eliminates them from a root cause perspective, thereby eliminating the tickets produced by those known problems and reducing not only the TCO for service and support, but also the cost of the lost productivity on the part of the end users. Now, here's how you measure problem management. You look at your monthly ticket volume, and if you're effective, that should be going down over time. Tickets per user per month, take total ticket volume divided by your number of users on a monthly basis. That number should be going down. Your TCO should go down, and tickets prevented should go up. How do you measure that? You just look at the difference in tickets per user per month. Let's say you go from 1.1 tickets per user per month to 1.0 tickets per user per month. You've reduced the ticket volume by 0.1 tickets per user per month. Multiply that by the number of users, and you can look at the number. You can estimate the number of tickets prevented. So measuring prevention is always a little bit of a tricky thing. There's some assumptions that go into it, but if you want to know what the metrics of problem management look like, this is what should happen to your ticket volume, your total tickets per user per month, your TCO, and then the number of tickets prevented. Now, there's a couple of KPIs. One of them I alluded to earlier, problem velocity. If I have a problem that's been out there for 10 months and it has 1,000 tickets attached to it, the velocity of that problem is 10,000 tickets in 10 months or 1,000 tickets a month. That's the velocity of the problem. If by contrast, I have a problem out there that's been there for a month and it's got 1,000 tickets attached to it, the velocity is 1,000 tickets a month. Which are you going to work on first? You go with the high velocity tickets because they are the most impactful to your organization. So you may have a problem out there with more tickets, but the velocity is slow, versus a problem that's only been out there for a month or two, but the velocity is high because there are so many incidents attached to it. So problem velocity is an important concept, in part because you're never going to eliminate all your problems, but you want to focus on the big bang for the buck problems, those with the highest velocity. When you eliminate a high velocity problem, you've prevented those incidents from occurring in the future. And if it's high velocity, like 1,000 incidents a month, and you eliminate that problem from a root cause perspective, you're preventing 1,000 incidents a month from happening and reducing your cost by that amount and returning that level of productivity to your end users. Second metric would be your incidents associated with problems resolved. So the incidents associated with the problems resolved is sort of the inverse, if you will, of problem velocity. So if you eliminate a problem that's generating 1,000 incidents a month, then you've eliminated those 1,000 incidents per month. Both of these metrics are important when it comes to measuring your success in problem management. This is another challenge we find with ITIL, is that I mentioned earlier, they're not outcome focused, they're process focused. You can spend all day long on processes, but if they don't make you better, faster, cheaper, it isn't worth your time. It's a waste of time, in fact. You need to be able to measure the benefit of problem management. And one of those benefits is the incidents associated with problems resolved, this tickets prevented figure metric on the prior page here. So let me show you how, the top 10 problems by incident volume over on the left-hand side. Outlook is number 1, accounts locked number 2, point of sale, and this was for restaurant support. Point of sale device was number 3, video conference number 4. Now, if we sort them by velocity, take the number of incidents, divide it by the age of the problem in months, you come up, well, first of all, let me explain. On the left-hand side, the x-axis is the number of incidents attached to each problem. So Outlook being a problem, 600 incidents attached to it. Account locked, a little over 600 incidents attached to it. Point of sale, looks like 525 incidents. video conference, a little bit more than 200, and so on. Okay. There's a tendency to want to look at the problem with the most incidents and go after that first, go after Outlook, and then account lock, point of sale, video conference, and so on. However, if we recategorize by velocity, remember your incident volume divided by the months that the incident has been alive or the problem has been alive. The x-axis on the right-hand side is the velocity. Focus on your high velocity problems. Video conference is number 1. Okay, look at on the left-hand side, it was number 4. Outlook is number 2. On the left-hand side, it was number 1. Active Directory is number 3. On the left-hand side, it was number 10. So by focusing on the high velocity problems, you're going to have a bigger impact with problem management. And if you eliminate the top 10% or even the top 5% of problems with the highest velocity, you're generally eliminating 70 to 80% of your incident volume. So this is the 80-20 rule come to life. Focus on the big bang for the buck. Focus on the problems that have the biggest impact, the most incidents associated with them. You don't have to come anywhere close to eliminating all 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 problems in your known problem management database. Just focus on the high velocity stuff. You eliminate even 5 or 10% of those, you've probably eliminated 80% of your tickets. Let me go through a case study. This was a big insurance company that we worked with, and a benchmark that we conducted for them, and one of the metrics we look at is tickets per user per month. The CIO at this company saw that their ticket volume on a per capita basis was 2 times the peer group average. So the CIO saw this, wasn't happy about it for obvious reasons, and said, okay, I'm going to stand up. They had what were called tiger teams. You know, they're sort of like these SWAT teams that swarm an issue. And he created a team on the spot and gave them the mandate of reducing ticket volume by 50% in 1 year. So this team was created on the spot with the goal of reducing incident volume by 50% in 1 year. And they used problem velocity to focus their efforts, focus on the problems that are generating the highest number of incidents. Now, it's pretty rare that a level 1 analyst, agent, supervisor, team lead, even a service and support manager is going to resolve a lot of problems. It's not that they don't have the intelligence to do it, but generally it's going to be the software owners, the application owners, the infrastructure owners, level 2 and 3 IT. They're the ones that understand the nuts and bolts of the hardware, the software, the infrastructure, the applications. They're the ones that understand why these incidents are being generated. And if you don't involve them, you won't have success here. So it's significant to note that this CIO, one of the largest insurance companies in North America, made it very clear that if you work in IT and you own an application or you own some infrastructure, you're going to be involved in this process. This isn't just a level 1 service desk initiative, because they by themselves will unlikely be successful. And so the word went out. There's this new Tiger team involved in incident reduction using problem management. And we need you, infrastructure owner, application owner, NOC coordinator, whatever it might be. We need the SMEs, the subject matter experts involved in this process, because you're the ones that have the expertise to get to root causes. And when we get to root causes, we can make real progress here. And they did in less than a year. They reduced the incident volume by more than 50%. They didn't do any formal ITIL training. They didn't do any certification. They just had an unrelenting focus on getting results. They looked at Splunk records. They looked at their ServiceNow records. They recategorized tickets and put them into categories that represented cause and effect. They improved the quality of the tickets by measuring ticket quality. Their focus was on reducing tickets by eliminating the underlying problems that were driving those tickets. Here's what happened. Okay, when we did our benchmark, this organization was generating about 165,000 level 1 tickets a month. A year later, they were less than half that, 79,000. Per user per month, they were at 2.2 tickets per user per month. They were down to 1.03, which, by the way, is about the industry average. So they were 2x the industry average. They reduced that significantly. They kept the team in place. They're now below 0.5 tickets per user per month. Their TCO, when this initiative started, was about 60 million a year. 1 year later, it was 28 million. And of course, as a result of that, fewer tickets, they were able to shed headcount. They didn't do any layoffs, but we know this is a high turnover business. Level 1 desktop support field services is high turnover. So as they attrited, meaning as people left for other jobs or left the company altogether, they just didn't replace them. So the cost savings comes primarily from labor savings. I'm never shy about saying this, but they didn't have to engage in any layoffs. They simply didn't backfill when individual technicians, analysts, team leads, and supervisors departed the organization. So tickets prevented, an estimated 85,700 per month. That's a big number. Multiply that by $20 per ticket, and you're at about $1,700,000 per month in savings. Just in TCO savings, doesn't even count the productivity savings for the end users in the organization. This is the kind of benefit you can get from a concerted ITIL hack focused on problem management. What are the success factors? Well, senior leadership was involved. This CIO, as I told you, stood up this Tiger team right on the spot, made it clear to everybody in IT that part of their responsibility was to work with this Tiger team to help them get to root causes on the high velocity problems. They focused on the high velocity problems. They got the application and product owners involved. They did the root cause analysis. And this is the real art of problem management, is how do you get to that root cause? That's a completely different presentation that we do. But they focused first on the high velocity problems. They understood from the start that, out of necessity, really, that we don't have time to go through a bunch of training, ITIL basics. There's 5 levels of ITIL training, as you know. And essentially what the leader of this Tiger team said is, we don't have time for that. We know what we're after. We're after ticket reduction through root cause analysis, and we're going to hack our way to a successful result. We're not going to waste any time on training and certification. That might be great if you have all the time in the world, and you have all the resources in the world, and you're willing to wait 3 years to see a result. They weren't. They were told, reduce ticket volume by 50% in 1 year. And they focused relentlessly on getting those results. They actually got that result in less than a year. So it was one of the biggest success stories I've seen in problem management, but the process can be replicated. In a moment, I'm going to get to your questions, but we do have a final poll I'd ask you to respond to. And we always give our listeners an opportunity to schedule a free consultation with MetricNet. And we can call you as early as this afternoon or tomorrow if you want to talk this week. If you want to call back sometime next week, let us know that as well. But these are half-hour sessions. You can use them any way you want. You can do Q&A. We can talk specifically about ITIL hacks and problem management, or we can talk about anything else IT service and support related. So if you're interested, please let us know that you'd like a callback from MetricNet for that free consultation. Now, on our website, I should say, you're going to find a whole bunch of educational resources for service and support professionals. We have our downloadable benchmarks. The most basic is priced at only $400. It includes 6 key performance indicators. And then we have what's called Plus, which is 24 key performance indicators. And then we have our Pro downloadable benchmark. These vary by geography. So you have one for North America, you've got one for the UK, you've got one for India, and so on. And that's our most comprehensive downloadable benchmark. We also, of course, do custom peer group benchmarks. On that site, you will find an ROI calculator for your service desk, a headcount calculator for your service desk, and a balanced scorecard template in case you want to download those resources. Please keep in mind that our webcasts are always free of charge. And if you like what you've heard today, I'd encourage you to go to our website and sign up for future webcasts where next month in September, we'll be talking about sourcing and the success factors in a typical sourcing relationship and how to avoid the pitfalls and take advantage of the key success factors. In October, we'll be doing our annual benchmarking roundup, first with contact centers in October, and then in November, we'll be doing a benchmarking roundup of our 2023 IT service and support benchmarks. So please sign up for those if you're interested. We also just launched a new podcast. It's called the ITSM podcast. We've had some great guests on the show so far. And if you're interested in hearing from some of the industry's legends, you will find those recordings on our podcast channel. That podcast is dedicated to dissemination of expertise and knowledge. Sorry, I skipped ahead. Disseminating expertise and knowledge of industry best practices in IT service management. And we do this by interviewing thought leaders on everything from AI and machine learning to ITIL and metrics. And you can subscribe to the podcast, it's free, to stay up on the industry's evolving trends. Once again, you can download today's presentation, I should say, and then some attachments. Just click the attachments button. And we'd ask you to rate our webcast. Let us know what you thought of today's webcast. Give us any feedback that you think we need to hear. And that brings us to our questions. So let me go ahead and open that up. Good, we've got a lot of questions. I never know if I'm starting at the top or the bottom, but the first question is this. What have you observed to be most effective to get your SME teams, subject matter expert teams, to prioritize the RCA root cause analysis needed for the high impacting problems? This is the largest challenge for our problem management team. It's a challenge for almost everybody, Brian. It's a challenge because when you look at the subject matter experts, whether they're writing applications, managing a NOC, and by the way, it's good to see you again. It's been a while since we've spoken. Hope things are going well for you. But Brian, it's a challenge for almost every organization. And many SMEs don't like getting involved in service and support. You know, they want to write their code, or they want to run their NOC, or they want to manage the network, or they want to run a data center. They just don't want to be bothered with service and support. But service and support is everybody's responsibility. And within the organization, there needs to be a culture cultivated by senior leadership, including the CIO. It says that support isn't just the job of level 1 or desktop support or field services. Everybody has a role to play in support. And if you abdicate that responsibility, there will be consequences. You know, one of the things that we encourage all of our clients to do is to publish a weekly report that shows all of the outstanding tickets and who owns those tickets. It's amazing how quickly those outstanding tickets get cleaned up when you publish a weekly report that shows who owns which outstanding tickets. You don't want to be at the top of that list. It doesn't look good. Some people call these name and shame reports. I don't particularly like that moniker, but that's kind of what it is. You're naming individuals who have a big backlog of tickets, and you're shaming them into doing what they're supposed to, which is manage your tickets. So that's one enforcement mechanism, if you will. But you also need the leadership of the organization to value service and support enough to make sure that they communicate the message that service and support is everybody's business, everybody's responsibility. And just because you're a SME writing code or managing the NOC or managing the network doesn't mean that you're not going to be involved in service and support. You are going to be involved in service and support. You're going to be managing tickets, resolving tickets, and we also expect you to get involved in this RCA team or this problem management team and help them get to root causes of known problems. So hopefully you have a sympathetic management that believes in the mission of service and support, which is everybody's responsibility, and is able to, by fiat if necessary, telling managers, part of your review every year is going to be, what did you do for problem management? Were you involved in the problem management process? How many known problems did you eliminate by working with problem management? So you want it to be driven from the top. You want it to become a cultural norm within the organization, and you want it to have teeth in it. The name and shame reports are a good way of calling people out that aren't managing their ticket queues very well, and including in an annual review for non-tech support professionals, what did you do for problem management this year? Did you focus on it? Did you do anything? Did you eliminate any problems? How much time did you spend on it? Those are all ways that you can drive the idea that everybody's responsible for service and support, including the proactive and strategic processes like problem, incident, and knowledge management. Mario, I see you, but it looks like I was going backwards on the problem list, so I will get back to your question in a moment. Next question is from Steve. How could we measure problem velocity if problem management is immature? What are the most critical fast track steps to problem velocity? Well, first thing you have to have is a problem management database. And as you identify problems, you need to enter them into the problem management database. So that's kind of the starting point, is create a problem management database, enter new problems as you encounter them, and then create a norm in the service desk whereby every time you close a ticket, you need to attach it to a known problem. That known problem might be, well, you saw, it might be Outlook, it might be video conferencing, it might be, could be a whole lot of different things, VPN token lock or whatever it might be. So create a known problem database, and then create a process whereby whenever a ticket is closed, you either attach it to a known problem or you create a new problem. So that's how you kind of bootstrap this, get it off the ground. And then over time, that known problem management database will grow. You simply look at the number of incidents attached to each known problem and divide it by the age of that problem in months to come up with the problem velocity. Next question is from Leonard. When you are in a dynamic environment, there are new systems, changes, increasing the ticket volume while problem management is trying to reduce them. How do you report that delta? There's a couple things you can do, and I understand where you're coming from, which is that you're always fighting the growth in ticket volume on a per capita basis, and problem management is designed to reduce the ticket volume on a per capita basis. And how do you know if your problem management is outpacing the growth in tickets, that delta? You can look at it by the number of new problems you open up. So as you add new systems and there are changes in the environment, new problems are going to come up. And so on a monthly basis, one of the things you can do is track the number of incidents associated with new problems. Let's just make up some numbers. Let's say you opened 20 new problems in the month, and the average problem had 10 incidents attached to it. So you now have 20 new problems with 200 incidents attached to those new problems. Let's say during that same month, you also eliminated 2 problems that had 10,000 incidents attached to them, or the velocity of those 2 problems was 500 incidents per month. So you reduced the number of incidents per month by 1,000 because there were 2 problems you eliminated, each with a velocity of 500 incidents per month. You eliminated 1,000 incidents per month forever, but there were new problems, 20 new problems entered in the database with 10 incidents each. That's 200. So you reduced through problem management your incident volume by 1,000, but it increased due to new problems by 200. You're gaining ground. But yeah, you're fighting that rising tide all the time. So it's that's how I would go about looking at that, Leonard. Okay. Is there a threshold number of incidents that need to be met before we create a problem record? No, not necessarily. You're not going to know how many incidents are associated with a problem until you open a new problem and start attaching incidents to it. So if you have an oddball incident and there's no problem for it, open a new problem, attach the incident. It's okay to have a problem in the problem management database with only 1 incident. You're not going to spend a lot of time unless it was an MI, major incident, which is enormously disruptive to an organization. Those usually get attacked. You all know from being in this industry that if you have an MI, you do a postmortem on that major incident and you get to the root cause and you do your best to, you pull out all the stops to eliminate that root cause. So MIs, just by their nature, because they're so disruptive and so costly to the organization, they have problem management applied to them almost immediately. In fact, while the MI is open, you've got problem management going on, trying to figure out what the source of that major incident is. So if you have some problems with only a few incidents attached to them, that's okay. You're probably never going to focus on them, but there is no minimum number of incidents needed to open a new problem, and you're not going to know how many incidents are associated with a new problem until you open that problem and start attaching incidents to it. And then over time, you can measure the velocity of that. Are some problems not worth resolving? For example, if the solution is cost prohibitive? Yes, absolutely. Some problems just aren't worth it. Yeah, we all live with problems. It's, in our personal lives, in our work lives, and in IT service and support. You're not going to eliminate all these things. And some are either too costly to eliminate, or their velocity just doesn't rise to the level of any kind of attention. If you have, a typical, SEV2 or SEV3 problem, and you've got 10 incidents attached to it, it's probably not even worth bothering with. So nothing is perfect in this world, and we have to live with the 80-20 rule in mind. How do we get 80% of the value with 20% of the effort? Because there's not enough time to do everything that we would like to do. And yes, there are some solutions that are cost prohibitive, which maybe don't make sense right now, but might make sense in the future. For example, there might be an organization that realizes their ITSM system is outdated, but they can't justify an investment in a new ITSM system right now. And maybe the ITSM system is outdated because it doesn't produce diagnostic reports. It doesn't allow good problem management, for example. And the organization may say, we just can't justify an investment in a new ITSM system right now. So yes, these things do come up, and we have to make, sometimes the trade-offs are easy, sometimes they're tough. But yes, there are many problems that either because they're cost prohibitive or because the velocity is so low that aren't worth wasting any time on. Okay, next question. You mentioned AI tools that automate problem management. Yes, there are some AI and machine learning tools. I don't like naming names, but I've seen demonstrations now of AI tools that do automatic problem management. They automatically open new problems if there is no problem associated with an incident, and they automatically calculate the velocity for you, and they automatically look for root causes, detect those root causes, and eliminate those root causes, or send an alert to the problem owner to let them know what that root cause is, so that that problem owner or that problem owner can eliminate from a root cause perspective that problem. And we are starting to see that now. So I think the future of ITIL is automation, because the human approach to ITIL has been, again, I'm not an ITIL hater, but I'll say it anyway. I think ITIL's has not delivered the results that were promised. An incident, problem, knowledge management, let alone the other 31 practices. I think it's been, it's done some good for the industry, but like I said, it's process focused, not outcome focused. And if I don't see outcomes better, faster, cheaper, what's the point? And so the future of ITIL is in automation, not in individuals, with all this labor intensive effort working on problem incident knowledge management, for example. Question from Chris. Good to see you on the webcast, Chris. We struggle with good categorization, finding the balance between being too general versus too granular. Any tips or best practices for approaching categorization? Here again, AI is taking over this task because, the better AI tools will take your existing categorization and completely recategorize your tickets by looking at past data. And here's what makes AI possible: is massive computing power, as well as massive amounts of data. So imagine having, huge amounts of computing power. These SaaS tools, these SaaS AI tools have that, and you've got, say, 3 to 5 years of data, ticket data, and telephony data, ACD data, and BondGuard data, and all the data that gets generated in the IT service support environment. Imagine having, 10 million records, or 10 million data points, or 100 million data points, and a huge amount of computing capacity. What they can do is look at all of these tickets, both the formatted data as well as the unformatted data, and recategorize them and find how the categorization should work. So if your categorization is weak, welcome to the club. 99.9% of all service and support organizations are terrible at categorizing their tickets. I believe the task will be taken over and done very well by automation, just like I believe that task of maturing ITIL practices, the ones that are worthwhile, like problem incident knowledge management, will be taken over by AI tools. What you can do is, Chris, is if you have an expert at level 1 who's capable of going through tickets and looking at how they were categorized and grading that level of categorization, was it accurate, was it inaccurate, you can improve the manual categorization over time. It's just, it's very time consuming, it's very tedious. So yeah, you can do it, but it's time consuming and tedious. I think the AI machine learning tools are about to go mainstream. They're not yet, you know, despite the fancy demos you can get, they're not yet ready for prime time. But when they are, the whole challenge of ticket categorization is going to go away. It will be automated, just like problem incident knowledge management will be automated. From Matthew, sounds like you've fallen down a well. Can the audio be improved? Oh, sorry, I'm reading this at the very end, Matt, but hope you stuck with us and I hope you're able to hear me better. And then Tommy kind of had the same comment. There was an echo. Okay, now I missed a question at the top, actually a couple of them. Let me go back to them. Okay, Mario, thanks. What do you do if the ITSM tool is not being used to record all incidents, but just part of them? What would you do first? How would you find out what the high velocity problems are? It depends on how many incidents are being recorded. The question is, why are you not recording all incidents? Is it just lack of discipline, meaning that the tickets aren't being entered into the ITSM system, or is there something else going on? If it's a lack of discipline, that's easy to solve. You simply make, as a requirement, logging every incident. That is creating a ticket for every incident. That's kind of standard best practice. Now, if there's something else going on, like there's a group of customers where for whatever reason you don't have an ITSM tool where you can record the ticket, that's a different issue. But however many tickets you're recording, you can start, just as I mentioned with Steve earlier. First thing you want to do is set up a problem management database, and there are pretty easy ways to do that. Then you want to start opening new problems, and then over time you want to be attaching incidents to those known problems. So you got to build up your problem management database and be attaching incidents to known problems before you can get started on real problem management. And once you have 10, 20, 30 problems there and 100, 200, 300 incidents attached to those problems, you can start to see where the high velocity problems are, and you can start to attack those high velocity problems. So if it's just a process issue that you're not recording all incidents, that's lack of discipline. It's poor process. And you can fix that by fiat, which is another way of saying that you just mandate it. And you make it a requirement that every time a technician or an analyst or an agent provides assistance, they should open a ticket. So that's the resolution of the process issue. If there's something else going on, as I mentioned, that will require a different solution, maybe a different ITSM tool, I'm not sure. But you can start small, create that problem management database, and then start attaching known incidents to that. Looks like that was the last of the questions we had, so I want to thank you for that. And more importantly, I want to thank everyone who's still on the call for joining me today for our discussion on hacking problem management. I hope you found it to be informative and insightful. This concludes our webcast today, and I hope to see you all on next month's webcast. Thank you.